What's going on, guys? It's Brian, and in today's video, I'm going to be jumping into my computer and I'll be showing you guys a unique approach to organizing your year and how I plan my 2019. You ready? Let's go. All right, welcome back. So now we're just going to jump right into the computer and I'm going to dive right into it. So again, a unique approach to organizing your year, and this is basically how I planned my 2019. It's really, really unique and really simple in my opinion here, and it's not going to be rocket science. I'm not trying to hype it up, but it's called the 2H4Q system, okay? But before we begin, I'm going to start with a disclaimer. I don't take credit for this method. Okay, I'm here to show you something that is a modification of what I've seen before. I don't claim to be the creator of this, but I don't know anyone else pushing this exact system. So I'm pushing this system onto you guys. Consider trying something like this and let me know what kind of results you get. Okay, again, I'm not trying to hype this up. It's actually really simple, but a different way of planning your year and organizing your thoughts and organizing your to-dos and goals for the year. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. So the 2H4Q system. 2H stands for 2 halves and 4Q stands for 4 quarters. Okay, simple enough. And we'll start into diving we'll start by diving into the 2 halves here. So the 2 halves. Half 1 is from January 1st to June 30th, and then half 2 is consisted of July 1st to December 31st. So no matter what, there's always gonna be 365 days in a year, right? But no matter what, you know, if it's in 2019 or 2020 or 2021, 2022, these exact dates will be the first half of the year and the second half of the year, respectively. Okay? So, with that in mind, here's an example of what my 2 halves look like. So, for the first half of this year, I'm going to be focusing on my agency, okay, my agency business. And the second half of the year, I'm going to be focusing on my teaching and coaching business. Okay, so teaching is basically a giant umbrella of consulting and coaching and mentorship and one-off calls, or I teach people how to do certain things related to my business, or basically anything related to consulting and coaching. So for the first year, or for the first half of this year, I'm going to be focusing mainly on the agency. Now, there's a reason why I chose this diagram here, because no matter what the second half is consisted of, it's basically with this big, thick border around this whole thing. It's demonstrating that it's one cohesive unit, okay? It's 2 parts to one whole. And a large part of it, no matter what happens in the second half, is built upon the foundation created by the first half, okay? So I'll let you know what I mean here. But this is basically gonna be my breakdown for the year, okay? This is what my 1 half, 2 half looks like. So maybe for you, it'll be a little bit different, right? Depending on where you are in your career or what you want to focus in life. It's getting a little dark here. Maybe for the first half, you're focusing on the career, right? So maybe you might not have a job right now. Maybe you do have a job, but you want to find a better job because you just want to feel more fulfilled and you just want the ideal job for you as an individual. So for the first half of the year, you're going to focus on your career. You're going to focus on finding the perfect job and being happy in your 9 to 5, for example. Now, maybe you've always wanted to do a side hustle, or maybe you've always wanted to dive into a hobby that you've been meaning into for a long time. Well, that's what the second half of this year could look like, right? If you want to structure it that way. So think of it as like 2 halves being 2 projects. So for the first half of the year, you're going to focus on one project, and then for the second half of the year, you're going to focus on another project. Now, this is related to your career and related to your professional side, for example. But what if you want to do it differently and you also want to see if you can implement this for your hobbies, right? So what if for the first half of this year, you wanted to learn how to play the guitar? Maybe you already know how to play guitar, or maybe you just want to get better at it. Okay, so you're going to dive into improving your guitar playing skills in the first half. The sun keeps coming in and out. Now, for the second half, you're going to focus on singing. Maybe you've always wanted to sing, but you know that you need a foundation in music and be able to play some music to sing along to. So that's why, singing is going to be built upon the foundation of playing guitar, right? So as you can see, that's 2 different projects within 1 year. Okay, now that concludes the first part of this kind of breakdown, right? So the 2H part, the 2.5 part. Now we'll talk about the 4 quarters. So the 4 quarters, again, these are going to be the exact dates of the quarters, right? So it's always going to be from January 1st to 31st. That would be quarter 1. Then quarter 2 would be April 1st to June 30th, and so on and so forth. But if each half is a project, think of the quarters as 2 separate projects that build up to that big project, okay? So let me show you what I mean by here. My 4 quarters. So as you've mentioned, or as I've mentioned and you know from before, the first half of this year, I'm going to be focusing on my agency, okay? So what would that look like is the first quarter, I'm going to be building up the agency. So that would mean, determining my niche, determining my services, what kind of ideal client or ideal audience I want to cater towards, right? That would be about building up that foundation so that you can have something going forward, right? Having the clients and having the cash flow to be able to fund all of this stuff, right? So then quarter 2 would be scaling the agency. That's when I'm going to have enough cash flow to be able to hire people, to be able to, automate certain things, reaching out to clients or hiring somebody to do product delivery for me or customer service side of things, right? So that's something to keep in mind, because if you don't have the cash flow built from quarter 1, you're not going to be able to do that stuff in quarter 2. So once my agency is thriving and doing well, then that's when, of course, half 2 comes along, and then the beginning of quarter 3, I'm going to be creating digital products, right? So that's going to be consistent of creating like a low ticket offer, like a lower price point. And then eventually I'll have a higher ticket offer, a higher price point. So you want to be able to be building that while your agency is running in the background, right? So that's basically the mentality that I have. And then as you sell like the lower ticket stuff, you're going to be building the buyers list. So then eventually you can upsell them a more expensive product in the future, right? So that's where quarter 4 comes in. That's when I build out the systems to scale up the digital products, right? Maybe I start running ads to it, or maybe I just start building systems to automate, funnels, and maybe I'll start hiring other people and contractors to help that as well. So that's a breakdown of what my business looks like in terms of the 4 quarters. Now, if say, for example, we went back to the example where I gave you, maybe you're, for the first half, you're going to be focusing on your career, and for the second half, you're going to be focusing on a side hustle. Okay, so the first quarter, somebody you don't have a job, or if you do have a job and you're still looking for the perfect job, you're going to find, apply, interview, and then land that perfect job. Okay, now obviously the perfect job will depend on what you define as a perfect job. It could be the perfect paying job, the right work-life balance, or the right location, your coworkers, the culture, stuff like that. Or maybe if you live in a place where the economy isn't very good, like where I live right now, where I'm from, in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and the entire province of Alberta, it's not really that easy to find a job right now. Like, the job market isn't the best. So if you have a job in the first place, if you're living in Alberta and in Calgary, you're pretty much well ahead of the curve. Okay, that's just the reality of it. But again, quarter 1, you're going to find the perfect job. Then quarter 2, you're going to build rapport. You're going to get ahead. Okay, you're going to mesh well with your coworkers. You're going to participate in after work activities so that you can have a good team to work around. Then you get ahead, right? Maybe you're an accountant and then you have to pursue your CPA and maybe furthering your education or taking courses, stuff like that. Just basically, again, first half of the year, you're going to be focused on your career, making sure that's well off, making sure that's going to feed your passions later down the line. And then for quarter 3, the second half of the year, you're going to be researching side hustle opportunities. Okay, so that could mean reading books, that could mean networking or interviewing people or asking your friends, or that could also mean just planning out what you want to do, right? Figuring out the pros and cons of each opportunity. And then finally, in the last quarter, that's when you start putting in the work part-time, right? Because you'll be working full-time. Maybe you only have 10, 15 hours a week to dedicate on your side hustle for both researching and putting in the work, right? But that's the kind of effort and requirement it requires, or I guess requirement that it needs in order to start the side hustle and be able to build upon a business. So maybe you start getting some income in this 4th quarter, right? If that's the case, maybe your goals for 2020, first half will be to scale up the business or scale up the side hustle. So you can start making even more money, and maybe you might even hire people here and there. And then for the second half of 2020, maybe that's when you quit your job, right? That's a goal. So Again, it's very simple, but it's just a different way of framing things where you treat everything like a project. And when you treat things like a project, it's kind of brings new light to the task at hand, right? It makes things more exciting. You have something to look forward to. And it's another way to set deadlines, right? Because again, no matter what, this is going to be the 4 quarters, right? So by March 31st, you want to accomplish this, this, and this. Well, you better bust your ass off and you actually start doing the things that you planned for yourself, right? So that could be your 4 quarters. So of course, if you break it down to quarters, you could break it down into months, right? So for example, in quarter 1, there's always going to be January, February, and March, okay? So these are example goals for these months. Say, for example, you want to start your own agency. This is not relative and related to what I'm doing, but as an example, maybe for a goal in January is to create the agency foundation strategy, right? How you want to create content, finding your niche, determining what kind of services you offer, determining your strengths and weaknesses. Maybe you want to have a co-founder, stuff like that. February, that's when you can start reaching out to people, right? You can refine your craft. Maybe you can land a couple clients. And then for March, your goal might be to scale the outreach and the product delivery processes, right? So if you break it down in the quarter, you can break it down because every quarter has 3 months. There's always 12 months in a year. You're just basically breaking down the 12 months into 4 manageable chunks in the quarters. And then within each quarter, you can be like, January, this is what I want to do. February, this is what I want to do, etc. And last but not least, if you break it down into months, you're going to be breaking it down into weeks. Okay, so I don't have specific goals as examples here, but every month has 4 weeks. Okay, February has around roughly 28 days, depending if it's a leap year or not. But every month has at least 4 weeks and at least 28 days. So maybe, in order to have a more manageable chunks, you can be like for, week 1, there's, 2 or 3 things that you have to do by the end of that week so that you can complement your goals in January, right? And then maybe in week 3, you'll be like, hey, I want to create 3 YouTube videos by the end of week 3. That's one task. And then maybe another task for week 3 could be like, I want to reach out to 20 prospective clients or 20 prospects, right? And then that's 2 things. And then if you're doing all these things, no matter what, if you're accomplishing the tasks, first of all, you got to make sure they're doable, right? You got to keep yourself accountable. You don't want to make it unrealistic. You want them to be smart goals and smart tasks. You don't want them to be unattainable. But if you make them realistic and you actually follow through and actually accomplish them, then all the tasks that you do in week 1, 2, 3, 4, it's going to build up to your tasks and your goals for January and so on and so forth, which will feed into the quarter, which will feed into the half, and then feed into the year, right? So last but not least, you're basically breaking down things 4 times, okay? You now have 52 manageable chunks, okay? So obviously you go from year to half to quarter to month to week, and you can break it down to days. For me personally, if I break it down to days and it's too strict, I might not get as much done. But if I know the 2 to 3 top tasks at hand that I have to complete by that week, I'm more productive. I don't feel restrained or restricted by my own goals or by my own tasks. So you can definitely, and I do recommend you have daily to-do lists so that for those 7 days of the week, you can build up to your goals for the week and so on and so forth. But if you set up this kind of overview and then you can have a clearer picture of looking at things, you definitely will be way more productive if you just look at things and be like, hey, I want to accomplish these 2 things in a year. How the heck am I do that? Oh yeah, I'm gonna focus on both of them at the same time. When it's probably smarter to treat 2 different things and then tackle them as 2 separate projects in 2 different times of the year, so that you can focus on a couple things at once. Maybe a couple tasks for that quarter, and then you don't even think about what you're gonna accomplish later on because you already have things planned out. You know what I mean? So again, for this first half of this year, I'm focusing on my agency. But as time goes on, when I'm able to have, more experience, more case studies, more results, more everything, I'm going to be able to have a more successful training business because I already have a solid foundation from before. You know what I mean? So in order to have that build up, you got to be able to plan it. And it's one sequence after another, right? It all starts in January and then it's just snowballs from there. So I hope you found this video helpful. Again, I don't claim to be the creator of this system. In fact, there's a lot of people that break things down in quarters. But the way that you look at the quarter, when you treat each quarter as like its specific project that leads up to a bigger goal, and then you manage the entire year into 52 chunks, because that's how many weeks there are in a year, you're way more productive and you're way more likely to accomplish your goals. Okay. Again, if you finish everything you need to do for the week, you're going to finish everything you need to do for the month, and then for the quarter, and then for the half, and then for the year, etc. So this is the very first year that I've been doing this, and I've been pretty productive in January. So we'll see how it goes. But I hope you appreciate how simple it is, and hopefully this gives you a different perspective on how to do things. Okay. So again, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please give me a like, as well as hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate that. And if you can hit the follow button and follow me on Instagram, I'd really appreciate that too, if that's your thing. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.